Stu Lance is an icon. He's been broadcasting for 35 years. One of the best ever. One of my favorites ever. And he has never said a more accurate thing than what he just spit into that hot mic. Same old bleep, different day. Get this over with. Put us out of our misery. See, Stu might have been speaking for himself or maybe a few coworkers. I don't know that Stu knew, or maybe he did because he's Stu. He was actually speaking to Laker fans, but really on top of that, he was speaking for Laker fans because this entire season was same old bleep, different day. And last night, Laker fans were finally put out of their misery. The Suns beat the Lakers, and now LA is finally done. The long, miserable season is finally over. They're not making... Thanks, Rit. Thank you very much, Ike. Way to be present. Mr. President, finally.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Finally.
This guy, I can't shut this old guy up. Rit. They're not making the playoffs. They're not making the play-in. They aren't doing anything. It's just over. Man, and thank bleep for that because it was horrible. Every part of it was horrible. Every single minute of it was horrible. Horrible and dumb, in fact. Horribly dumb. Now, the good news is the Lakers season is done. Really good news. The bad news is the Lakers are not done being the Lakers because you know what they're going to do, right? They're going to convince themselves that the problem was the head coach and the fact that they had so many injuries. The way the Lakers see it, the problem with the Lakers is never the Lakers. And the solution to the problem is always more Lakers. In other words, they are going to Laker the hell out of this thing and somehow find a way to make it even worse because that's what they do. They're going to find a way to blame the wrong things and do even worse things. Time and time again, this organization makes really weird, really dumb moves, and they've been doing it for a long, long time. So don't put this on Frank Vogel. They will. Don't put it on the injuries. They will. Hey, by the way, that big three, you know that, if we only had our big three, Well, when you did have your big three, you were barely better than 500. And by the way, that big three, those pieces don't fit. So don't put it on the injuries or that. Or don't even put it on the GM wanting to be the GM. It's all of those things. But most of all, it's the Lakers being the Lakers. It's who they are. It's what they do. Weird organization. Weird is often good, but not in their case. Weird is just weird. Weird is bad. Weird is awful. It's just like guys like Wilt, Jerry, KAJ, ERV, KOBE, and LeBron. Like, these guys have all papered over the cracks. I mean, let's remember what they've done recently. They kept THT over trading for Kyle Lowry. They let Alex Caruso go be Alex Caruso someplace else. They jerked around with Ty Lue in the coaching search, and now he's killing it with the Clippers. You see, the Lakers' solution to everything has been to make it even more Laker. And that's terrible for Team Lakers, but pretty awesome for team content. Let's not forget, they took a pretty damn good team last year, and they decided to break that thing up. They decided to break it up, but they didn't just make it worse. They made it so much worse. They went from having a series lead on the eventual Western Conference champs to completely missing the postseason, and they did all of that while the GM was having a freakishly good season. Like the Spurs, they're going to be in the play-in game, and the Spurs weren't even trying to get into the play-in game. The Lakers were so bad that the Spurs had no choice but to get in. The Lakers have been worse down the stretch than Portland, and the Blazers detonated their entire season. Like, I don't think that I can stress this enough. The Lakers are a weird organization. Really weird. SOSDD. Oh, and A or F. Give me an A or an F. They're that too. SOSDD AF. A or an F. 17 championships, but a 17-win season only a couple of years ago. And, of course, now there are the reports that they're going to fire Frank Vogel. Of course, because those reports have been out there for months. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that Vogel was the coach of the year. I'm not saying that. But if you think the only problem with this team was the head coach, you're either dumb as hell or you work for the Lakers. Can I repeat that? So those of you in the back or those of you who are really dumb, hear it. If you think that Vogel was the only problem with the Lakers, that the head coach is the only problem, you're either dumb as hell or you work for the team. Just like if you think the only problem with this team was injuries, you're either dumb as hell or you work for the Lakers. But the Lakers seem to think that. The Lakers seem to think that. And you know what? I love it. It's so moronic. I love it. Just like I love this. I love the report from Jake Fisher that the Lakers are looking at Doc Rivers and Quinn Snyder as possible replacements. That's funny. That's funny. Doc Rivers or Quinn Snyder, like they have their choice because they're the Lakers. What, Greg Popovich didn't want any of that? Steve Kerr did not want any of that. Kerr didn't want to bring in a staff of Pop, Coach K, and Quinn Snyder with him. They didn't want any of that. Oh, and speaking of people wanting things, here's something for you. Why would Rivers or Snyder want this job? For who? For what? To coach a bunch of guys who are limping and crawling towards 40, and then that one young guy who always gets hurt. Yeah, I guess maybe Doc might want to change the scenery after a couple of years in Philadelphia. But would he really want this job? And I say this as somebody who's always liked Doc, but it's not exactly like Philadelphia is a smooth-running machine. Or how about Quinn? Maybe he wants a new team. Maybe he wants a new team and a new situation after a long run in Utah. But there are much better jobs than this. In fact, I'm not sure there's a worse job than this. And then there's this awesome line. I mean, hey, Rome, we get it. Yeah, you may get it, but I could do this for 3 hours. Then there's this awesome line, quote, multiple league figures contacted by BR referenced the possibility that Lakers senior basketball advisor Kurt Rambis returns to the sidelines after several previous coaching stops in the league, including an interim stint as Los Angeles' head coach. However, Rambis is said to be an integral figure in the front office and unlikely to resume a coaching role. End of quote. Again. It's just so awesome. I'm not sure what's more hilarious, the possibility of Rambis taking over as head coach or the fact that the only reason why he wouldn't is because he's considered a, quote, integral figure in the front office. Incredible. The only time the guy's been a full-time head coach, he went 32-132 in Minnesota. The dude was 100 bleeping games under 500 in 2 years. He had a winning percentage below 200. I mean, that's like the worst batting average ever, but a hilarious winning percentage. This dude was 100 games under 500 for 2 years. The fact that his name is mentioned within 5,000 miles of the Lakers' job should enrage Laker fan. I mean, do that. Try and do that, and you may as well burn the crypt to the ground. Which means the Lakers, knowing them, there's a damn good chance they'll do just that. No matter what they do, they're going to Laker the hell out of this. You know it. And I love it. SOSDD.
SOSDD.
SOSDD. Meet our new coach. He was 100 games under 500. Hey, remember when LeBron hated the playing game? Remember that? Well, you want to talk about an ice-cold take. Whoever came up with that bleep needs to be fired. You're right, Bron. Whoever came up with Space Jam 2 needs to be fired. Anyway, that's not the point. About the playing game, you're right. There should have been a playing game to get into the playing game. That's the idea. Like the playing game is not a destination or a goal for anybody. It's kind of like porn. You don't aspire to get into it. You end up in it.